To the right, sir. Okay, well, welcome to the October 11th Medfield Board of Selectmen meeting. This meeting will be held in a hybrid format. The Board of Selectmen will attend in person, and members of the public may attend in person, and several of them have this evening. In addition, members of the public who wish to participate via Zoom may do so by joining one of the following options. And what you do is go to the town website, open up the Board of Selectmen agenda for tonight, and use the Zoom link that's provided there. There's also information if you just want to join by conference call on our meeting agenda. This evening's meeting is going to be live streamed. It will be recorded, but also live streamed by Medfield TV. So you'll be broadcast. For anybody who is here in the room tonight, we will ask you to use either the podium, which is actually the feedback we've gotten from people if you're going to talk for a while, is that the audience prefers you use the podium because the audio works better. But if you're just asking a question or making a comment, we'd ask you to grab the microphone, which we usually refer to as the Bill Massaro honorary microphone, because it's often close to where he's sitting. Yes, and he has it. He does in fact have it. We have confirmed where the location of that microphone is. When you use that microphone, your voice is not amplified here in the room. It's only used to pick up the audio feed for Medfield TV, so don't be alarmed if you don't sound any louder when you're talking to the microphone than otherwise. This time we'd like to take a moment just to recognize our service members across the globe working to defend our country. Thank you. Okay, the first item that we have on our appointments is planning board members to discuss the schematic sidewalk design study and strategies for Route 109 from Pound Street to the Shaw's Plaza. And I assume, Sarah, you are going to start off.
I'm going to kick it off. Yeah, Sarah Raposa, town planner. I'm going to kick this discussion off with a little bit of context on how we got here. As you know, last year the planning board approved the master plan, which had been a 2-year planning process. There was a master plan summit in December of 2021, and the planning board introduced to the community 4 main themes that were part of the master planning process, and also some initiatives that they were to work on over the spring. And we were lucky enough to get grant funded for all 4 of these initiatives. So it was a very hectic spring for the planning board. The first one was a grant diagnostic. This isn't meant to, you don't need to read everything because all of this is actually on the planning board's webpage. But this is a fundamental document that's actually trying to create a more user-friendly zoning bylaw. So you don't necessarily have to have a law degree or special talents in order to understand what it's trying to ask of you as a homeowner or it's a potential business. So the information that we got from that, we've already done phase 1 of that, which is to reorganize our existing zoning bylaw. So that's what you're going to see for annual town meeting come springtime. And the planning board feels that's probably going to do it for Springtown meeting, unless anything comes down the pike that we actually must do in order to remain in compliance for anything, like 3A zoning or something like that. But we'll just leave that there, talk about it again later. Downtown and 109 mixed use zoning. The information that we got from our consultants is magnificent, and it's complicated. So what this is going to do is be really important for the town, but we felt that it was a little bit too complicated to mix in with a reorganization. So we want to start early in the sort of public education process, that we're going to be proposing some changes to allow better mixed-use opportunities in commercial districts, like along 109, and not the whole way on 109, but the business areas, downtown and sort of around Shaw's. As part of the grant, we also worked on how to sort of update, modernize, and make better our existing open space residential zoning, also known as cluster zoning. In our drafts, we're actually calling it open space neighborhood zoning. Again, it's a little more complicated than might be an easy change, so we're gonna hold on that while we do some public education as well. The fourth grant that we worked on was Downtown Wayfinding Plan. This is something that we're not going to actually talk about tonight. We had it as a separate agenda item, but we're going to wait and come back to you because we had some great ideas from the town administrator today.
Always at the last minute, sorry.
Shortens the meeting.
And so what we are here to talk about tonight is just to introduce you and the community to the conceptual sidewalk design. And this was just a very small component of the grant work that was funded this year, $5,000. So really we just got a conceptual plan for discussion purposes. But basically, it really preserves and invigorates the 109 commercial corridor for both the mixed-use zoning and the cluster zoning. So I'm going to turn it over to Seth, who is going to go through very quickly the schematic sidewalk design, and then Jim is going to wrap things up. So if you guys want to come over to the podium.
Seth again, 30 Cross Street. Thanks for having us. This is a bonus, really, the sidewalk design as part of the grant. The consultants we had were so good, and our feedback was so excellent that we moved on to this small feature of seeing if it's doable to put in a sidewalk from Town Street to the Shaw's Plaza. So what you're looking at, just we can go through these pretty quickly, is what we have now and then what's possible. The work was so detailed, it was basically used satellite imagery and available maps to address obstacles that might be in the way, to give us the layout of what's probably the most cost-effective way to move along 109. And so you'll also see that there are areas where we're addressing curb cuts that are existing, especially on Hatters Hill. So what you're looking at here, coming along the south side of 109, the gray is the shoulder. The white would be the sidewalk itself, and I think Sarah circulated the designs in terms of concrete and kind of the granite edge.
Yeah, these are available on the planning board's website, so everybody can take a closer look, because I know that's probably impossible to read.
And so what they also identified was the right of way, and so you see that with kind of the dotted line that goes along south of the way. And so there are some points where they know where each and every mailbox is. The good news is that the utility poles are in good shape and in the right spot, so you don't have to worry about that. But they identify other things such as wetlands and the like to avoid, or at least to be gentle. So I think the takeaway from this is that it's doable, and if it's something that's a priority of this board and DPW, that at least we've got the initial heavy lifting done by these consultants.
Huge.
So I think kind of wanted to end here with kind of how the entrance to that business plaza in between the gas station and Donut Express would kind of be bumped out a little bit, and then maybe that's our last one, kind of more substantial fixing of that intersection, which was something that we were looking at with the latest proposal from Chipotle going in where that lower 3 is.
So Seth, you're not, when I look at the green and gray area up there, no sidewalk, but you're making the crosswalks, you're improving them and making them say, okay.
Exactly. I think Jim can touch on a little bit on why we'd want to kind of tie into that neighborhood.
Sure. As part of the Chipotle process, over the summer, we did site plan review for Chipotle at the plaza there. So we went through a public meeting process, an open meeting process to get to that point. Part of that, and it's not, as part of the planning that went into that location, it took into account the sidewalk plan that you have in front of you right here. So it's able to connect into the circulation that is planned for the Chipotle site. And if you see that green line on the right-hand diagram, that's
Okay.
where the circulation would come in off of the sidewalk, but then progress up onto the hill where Chipotle is going to be located, and across the front of Chipotle, get you over to the plaza front, Marshall's in that area over there, Blue Moon Bagel. So it's taken into account. The project itself is not going to carry any sidewalk improvements for Chipotle, but it did account for that. What came out of the public meeting process was some of the residents talking about that intersection at Hatters Hill, right, and the complexities of traffic coming in and out of Hatters Hill and coming in and out of the adjacent plaza over there. And that was just one schematic attempt to say, here's how we can improve that intersection. Again, it's just at a kind of a preliminary schematic level, and when Mo picks it up on his list to do, the finite engineering and options would come out of that. One left, yeah. Nope. All right, so we all know a walkable town is a great thing, so having this connection back down to the center of town, having people in Hatters Hill, being able to get to the center of town, the people maybe on Pound Street and the housing project there, being able to get down to Shaw is walkable. It's really probably a high priority for us in terms of one of the sidewalk improvements we would like to see get on the list.
So the good news is we're not asking for anything other than just consideration down the road.
No, I love it. I think that is, especially with, you see so many people. Matter of fact, some of the people that live in Tilden Village, you can see them coming down, and it's scary, right? So
Yeah.
that's get a nice sidewalk similar to what we already have closer to the center of town, where you've got the buffer of grass. So you've got, God forbid, somebody does look up too late. There's that buffer, because right now there's nothing, and thank goodness we haven't lost anybody that we can get something like this in there with cars going 45, 50 miles an hour. Probably not supposed to be going that fast, but they are. That'd be great.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Just so happens that I live right there.
Oh.
Knows that. Hi, I'm Suzanne Sino. So I happen to live right at that intersection. And what I'm wondering is the sidewalk ends at my home, which is 358 Main, and I didn't see an extension from that home to the end, to the corner of Pound.
Yep.
We
Are you thinking? No.
We just picked Pound Street. You're absolutely right.
Yeah,
You would need to go
yeah.
in the other direction as well.
Okay, good. Good.
But this was just for
Great,
the.
great. It looks fantastic. I'm absolutely thrilled. But there's that small section that I don't want anybody to be, it ends at my house. It's great. But that section from, there's another probably 100 feet that would have to be.
And it's weird, because
Yeah,
if you're walking along,
It's-
you're like, okay,
yeah.
this is kind of weird. Now you're
I
walking
know.
on somebody's lawn, right?
Yeah.
I know, and it's dangerous. That the next home, it's dangerous. So it's fantastic. I just wanted to make sure that was, that was something you
I think when
consider.
Mo goes through the process, we can go the other way too, whether it goes past Shaw's down, past the
Towards
gas
Levels.
station, towards
Well, I think
Levels.
there is a sidewalk. My friends live on it.
That's what you.
Yeah, there is one a little further down that we could connect into, yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of parcel down, but yeah, that would be great. And then then it's like, okay, when do we do Nebo and Philip and all that? Keep going. I know, it's not
It's
tonight.
a main corridor.
Great, any other
Okay.
questions?
Sorry.
I have a question. Newton Thompson, 5 Evergreen Way, not near 109, but I know your study is focused on foot traffic.
Yeah.
But could the next step, no pun intended, be that you'd consider bicycle lanes and that area, that margin on the road?
Yeah, certainly not to speak for the Board of Selectmen, but there is a complete streets policy that would take into consideration multimodal systems when 109 were to be reconstructed.
So when you say that, Sarah, just to make sure I'm on the same page, when you say reconstructed, is that beyond putting the sidewalks in or during the sidewalks?
Well, I think putting the sidewalks in is such an expensive procedure that it would probably be most cost effective
Same.
to combine it with the complete reconstruction. So this summer, the DPW did the resurfacing.
Right.
But that's not a permanent solution. And over the next several years, I believe the town's going to be looking for TIP money, Transportation Improvement Plan, from the state and federal sources to really fund the complete reconstruction, and where you'd have the shared streets component, which would include the sidewalks.
You're right.
Yeah.
So-
And the bike lanes, where would that?
So if we support this, I'm not saying, but if we were, how far down the road are we looking for something like this to actually happen?
So I think the plan for the 109 reconstruction is about 10 years away.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so we would need to decide if you wanted to do a sidewalk project in the interim, and unfortunately Mo couldn't be here tonight to discuss
Sure.
where this would fit in. Would it make sense to do this piece of it now and then the road reconstruction later, or incorporate all of it together? So we can have that conversation when he comes to you in November and presents his sidewalk prioritization plan.
Good.
So, yep.
Pete?
That was gonna be my question. When was Mo gonna give us his sidewalk priority plan? So that's good to hear that it's coming next month.
It's coming.
Yep, and so this is certainly one of the ones that's really important. So, and it's nice to see, this is a nicely done concept. So this is great.
And thanks to Sarah for getting the grant to get us there, so.
You're welcome.
It's one step closer, one step closer.
So I had a couple questions. One, when I went through the schematics before, this afternoon, my first question was, is this actually changing the roadbed? And my broader question was, is it expanding the right, are we taking any land by eminent domain? Or is the right of way in this diagram the current right of way?
I believe it's predominantly the current right-of-way. I think there was one little spot that was in question.
I think that Jim's right.
Yeah.
We didn't, and of course, this wasn't an engineering study, and it's always possible that a little bit of land taking would be necessary, or, so
Yeah, I
we'll
had more
figure
like
that
the-
out
Yes, but
later.
it's not a wholesale broadening of the entire
It is
roadbed plus
not.
right of way.
Okay. For example, maybe around Suzanne's area where the sidewalk is already in people's front yards, but maybe that would require a taking, just for example. But then, further down the road, it's a very wide road, so that you might be able to do some restriping and, adding this sidewalk wouldn't require taking.
Okay, then my next question, and probably you could go to almost any one of those overhead diagrams that shows that's as good as any. So there's the sidewalk, and then there's the gray zone next to it, which is the shoulder. And if the total roadbed's not widening, then I'm guessing that the shoulder is still the shoulder that we have.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Is-
So we're not so and where my head is going on this is, so if the shoulder is the shoulder, and then there's a sidewalk, and incidentally, my view is I wouldn't rule out the idea that we would move ahead. If it's 10 years to get this road,
Yeah.
in my observation on 109, virtually anywhere on 109, the one place that I see the most people walking without a sidewalk on what's High Speed Road is between Pound Street and Shaw. So I could easily see us making a decision to put a sidewalk in there, knowing full well that after 10 years, we might not put in an elaborate sidewalk, but putting one in there, it sure seems to me like it would be an improvement. So that's at least would be worth talking about, depending on what Mo comes up with. But I'm looking at the shoulder, and this, you'll hear anytime we talk complete streets, and we're talking about these kinds of roads, you're gonna hear this from me, is like, I look at our shoulders right now and what they are, and I'm sitting there saying, so this plan is to have the shoulder be effectively the same width and same location as our current shoulder, but it's gonna be a bike lane. And it's like, having ridden bikes on the shoulders of Medfield's roads, in the past, I'm trying to visualize, so is this a shoulder that has a drastically rethought concept for how a shoulder will be built? Catch basins somehow in a flush, quality of the paving is such that it doesn't all start crumbling. As it is, you're still gonna wind up with debris that's gonna fall off the road and beyond the shoulder, but at least it's probably wide enough for that. So if the geometry here is the same as the current road, and all we're doing is putting a sidewalk where currently there's a sloping, natural grass thing or something like that, or maybe a couple of places there were stone walls that were maybe in awkward places. And then we're gonna have a bike lane on Route 109 on the current shoulder. The one part for me that I just don't understand yet is how this shoulder is gonna be sort of a bike-appropriate shoulder in a way. Like North Meadows has a bike lane.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
that one's a good one.
Yeah,
But
North
it's-
Meadows is
but it's-
also,
Yeah, it's almost its own lane. So the only question I would have, if we ever get to this point, would be, I don't understand, current shoulders are not adequate as bike lanes, so the bikes will drive out in the road, which is fine on a side street, but it's problematic if it's
Yeah.
on Route 109, so.
I mean, I think that's when, Mo's, engineers really come into
Yeah.
play, and they lay it out properly, right? They lay it out based on best practices for bike lanes and sidewalks and shoulders. And,
Right.
the speed at which cars are traveling, and to
Right.
make sure that, that aspect is taken care of, in addition to properly handling the storm water that's
Right,
on the street.
Right, so that's the only unanswered
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, those are both.
So in my experience, particularly in Medway and Franklin, if one of those projects comes off a tip, then it's designed to Mass DOT standards. Their engineers put all that stuff in. If anything, they over-design it.
Okay.
So
Okay, well, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, is the stormwater is gonna, drive the cost of the project up. And also it's gonna create those, granite curbs. I also, wearing my, planner engineer hat, because I'm not an engineer, and an engineer would probably kill me for saying this, but you might reduce your, lanes a little bit.
Well, that's where that's why I asked the questions I'm asking, because Route 109 narrowing lanes, I would think is a problematic, as it is right now.
I think, Gus, though, if you narrowed it a little bit, you might see a small decrease in the rate of speed. Because that's something that studies have shown where, people see a wide berth and they feel safer.
Sure, but this is not a low-speed road, is what I'm getting at. I
Mm.
mean, yeah, the
Well,
idea of getting 109 down to
it's meant to
30
be a
miles an hour.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But I also think, you have shoulders on both sides, right? So you have the geometry on both sides. So if one is, if the recreated bike lane and sidewalk is pushing just a little bit, right, this way, the striping of your roadway may be able to be accommodated in this direction a little bit, to keep the sizes of the,
Like South Street Extension.
Well,
Yeah.
so this is where I was going with it, so it's narrowing of, like on a lot of roads, I understand that. And there's highway standards.
Yeah.
It's a concern, but not a qualified concern. That if the idea is, well, we're gonna do this by narrowing the widths of roads, I understand that in many places on Route 109, that's potentially, to me, problematic. Just this morning, I was driving back from that plaza, and there's a rubbish truck parked, picking up stuff. And as I'm driving by the Peak House, I'm looking at a car coming headlong at me in my lane, because people think that, well, if I have an obstruction in my lane, your lane is my lane. And it's like, that's not true. My lane is my lane, and there was enough room for me to get over onto the shoulder.
Yeah.
And we both passed through, but the people coming the other way were not, you're going 40 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And they're going 40 miles an hour, and they don't process, I have an obstructed lane, I need to stop to make sure I'm clear. They just kind of say, I passed the truck first, so it's your problem. And I can only see that becoming a greater problem as we start narrowing lanes. So,
Yeah.
but that's not an immediate issue here, because we're not doing it yet, but, okay. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Sarah, you're not done yet, right?
No, we're gonna hold on the wayfinding
We're gonna hold on the wayfinding.
till I can meet and
Okay.
talk about some broader
We'll bring
wayfinding.
something back
So
to
I have to
you.
get one comment in, though.
Oh, okay.
On page 27 of our package, you guys had me going for a minute when you talked about one of the areas was Wedding Hill. And I said, I didn't know that Medfield had a Wedding Hill. So it's the second hill. I figured that out like within 15 seconds. But for a minute, I was going, all this time I've been in this town and there's a Wedding Hill. I don't know the story about it. I don't know.
We're just rebranding things left and right. It's just willy-nilly.
Okay, well, anyway, that was on
Thanks for catching
page
that.
27. It did have me going. Next, we have, so you're off the hook, you're done, right?
Yeah, I'm just
Okay,
gonna,
just gonna get out of the way
show
for
some
Newton Thompson
support for
Affordable
Newton.
Housing Trust. Request approval of the $3,000 contract with Autism Housing Pathways, Inc. for the purpose of a local needs assessment and recommendations for supportive special needs congregate housing, also known as group homes, for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. The funding comes from the trust's account and was authorized at their September 1st, 2022 meeting.
Yes,
Hey, Newton,
Newton
how are you?
Thompson, 5 Evergreen Way, I'm doing fine. That about says it all, but I do have something to read into the record if you're okay with that.
It
So,
all depends what you're.
well, you'll have to wait and listen.
Go ahead.
So thanks for the opportunity to meet with you this evening. Joining me for this request is Suzanne Sino, and Suzanne has a long history with the Medfield Affordable Housing Trust, in fact, from its inception rather, and has been a driving force behind the trust's long-standing goal of creating group housing for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities in Medfield. She's been instrumental in educating me about the needs of this community, and through her association with the Medfield Inclusion Project, will be a source of contact information for this project. As the Affordable Housing Trust liaison for the Group Home Initiative, I'm requesting your approval to engage Autism Housing Pathways, Inc. for the purpose of conducting a needs assessment of local families of adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Based on this assessment, AHP will deliver the following. 1, recommend potential housing models for supportive special needs congregate housing, also known as a group home, appropriate for Medfield area families. 2, identify the operational and financial requirements of each model, as well as providers capable of operating a group home. And finally, recommend ways that the Affordable Housing Trust can facilitate this housing production plan initiative without taking on ownership or operational responsibilities. We're recommending Autism Housing Pathways based on their knowledge of housing for adults with autism. In fact, Suzanne introduced Kathy Boyle, president of AHP, to the Affordable Housing Trust back in May of 2020. At that AHT meeting, Kathy recommended that the trust look at the population of Medfield to first determine the need. And here we are proposing to do just that over 3 years later. The funding being requested is $3,000 for the consultant fee, which comes from the AHT's gift account transferred from the former Community Development Corporation. So thank you for your consideration, and we're happy to take your questions.
So since I sit on the Affordable Housing Trust, I'm very familiar with this contract. I love what we're doing, so I have no questions other than I applaud the effort, and what you're doing is fantastic.
Thank you.
So I applaud this effort as well and love the concept. I did have some questions, however. So that it said it was going to do a survey with respect to an approach and figuring out an approach. And can you maybe fill me in on what the different possible approaches would be?
Well, Kathy, and Suzanne may have some comment here as well. Kathy Boyle, in her work, has several different models, or I guess just in general, there are several different models for housing. And her survey will try to determine what the residents of Medfield would be comfortable with, what they need, what their adult children would be, could reside in, and propose those approaches or models to us. One might be in-home care, probably not fitting a group home per se. Another might be self-directed and self-funded home that might hold up to 6 individuals in the home, things of that nature.
So that would be like a condominium model where a family could
Yes,
buy their family member a bed in the
Yes.
house.
That's what I was referring to as approach.
Okay.
Suzanne, you have any
So,
additional thoughts?
so her initial hope is to get families to join in sort of a Zoom meeting to just assess interest. Okay, she has a fantastic presentation that she's done. So we're going to get families involved in that so we can at least give them the initial ideas of all the different things that are available to them. And then once we get everybody involved in that, then we start to meet individually with each of the families and assess their individual needs and what their particular child, their adult child, is, their capabilities, their financial, status, what they can afford as far as, this may not be state funds, so maybe private funds. So Kathy's going to just kind of draw from each family what their needs are, And really, we're going to look outside of Medfield as well, in the catchment area around Medfield, to see a home in Medfield. We'd love to have Medfield only, but we'd love to have people from surrounding communities as well. So we'll see. But she's a wealth of knowledge on all the different models of housing, and there's so many that's part of the reason this was just way too much for me. And she's really the expert in these different models and what's best for families. So I'm gonna work with her, and we're gonna get, there's probably already, I know, at least of about 50 families who are gonna participate.
Boy, that's
Just
a
to
great
begin.
database that you have, Suzanne,
Just
to
right,
start with.
and that's just to start. So the ones that I'm already familiar with, at least 50 families have come to meetings, and I'm sure with all the advertising, we're hoping to get maybe 100 families involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The select board got an email from a family, a person who had a family member that they assured us that they wanted us to support this, but I don't know. I'll send you that email so you can add that person to your database if they're not
Yes.
already in it.
Everybody, please, anybody who knows of anybody who has an adult child, literally 18 and over, and I also work with the schools as well, because as we know, there's adults in the school ages 18 to 22, so.
I gave him your name, but I didn't hear back from him whether he knew you or not, so. I think this is a great idea. Thank you guys for doing it.
Special thanks to Newton, because as you know, it's been a long journey for me, and Newton kind of jump-started it again, and I cannot thank him enough, so.
Well, our former chairman, who just happens to be sitting in the audience, Jim Brand, was very good about assigning responsibilities, HPP action items.
And, some people take their roles seriously, and he truly did. And, this was not something I think he had total familiarity with, but after lots of meetings, I probably bored him to death, but educated him as far as this population and the needs, and so we're really thankful to him, especially.
I happen to
and
know
all
that
of you.
Newton is foregoing another meeting to be here tonight.
Oh, my gosh.
That's right.
So thank you all for your consideration.
So I have some questions. You're not here. It's my job to have questions.
Mo would be so jealous if he snuck off without a question.
So you better get back on
Yeah,
that.
yeah. No, these actually, I'm absolutely supportive of this. Suzanne, to your point, I think the first time I ever thought very much about this was 4 or 5, 6 years ago when you came to the State Hospital Master Planning Committee meeting and talked about the place out of the Cape that you were referring to. We were trying to figure out what we could do that there, and that conversation is one of the things that has had me thinking about parents in particular who have adult children or children who will become adult children, and trying to picture, it's not that they have different capabilities, but perhaps they don't have capabilities that for sure 100% is going to be able to do it on their own. And there's a pretty good chance as a parent you're not going to be there all the time. So this idea of trying to figure out a way to give solutions and possibilities for parents that are thinking about that, I think is absolutely the right thing. But now, given that first thing that you talked about then, the idea now you're looking at different approaches. So now I'm sort of intrigued, because we've had other debates with the Affordable Housing Trust. I think when Mike Marcucci was on here, trying to figure out, the advantages of group home in the center of town versus group homes all the way out at the state hospital. So I'll actually be curious to see what they come up with here. I did have some questions, but first off, this probably just reveals my ignorance of something I probably am supposed to know. What's the Medfield Inclusion Project?
So the Medfield Inclusion Project was a little group I started, 10 years ago, just of families within Medfield who had adults with special needs, and we all wanted to be sure that in the rejuvenation of the state hospital property that something was included there to honor what had happened.
Okay.
And we wanted to be sure that there was opportunities for housing and live, and maybe job creation, and so that the state hospital we just could honor what who lived there in the past. So we got the group together, and then it sort of morphed into sort of housing within Medfield. So,
Okay.
and I do believe that the renovation of the state hospital will hopefully perhaps include a home of some sort. for individuals with some type of disability. So it's just a group of parents, is what it is.
So I feel vindicated because my first uneducated guess was, I bet you Suzanne Sino has something to do with this. So I guessed right. That's good. Second, is Kathy Boyle an independent consultant? We're contracting with a single consultant, right?
With Autism Housing Pathways, the corporation that she and other group of parents created to help parents with
So
adults
okay.
with
So the
children.
reason I asked the question is when I read the paperwork, it said, we have no employees. It's like, well, who are we hiring? It must be the person, it must be a consultant that we're hiring. So okay, that's how that works. And then, given that I thought it was just a consultant, Mark, you've looked at the contract as far as form?
Yes, you have. Oh, yes. You have definitely seen it.
Well, so
It's the Jen Golson contract, right?
Just to be clear.
But
well, let me tell you
Mark
why I
reviewed
have.
the contract and gave
You give it a
Newton
thumbs up.
comments, and then Newton went back to Kathy Boyle with
Okay.
the final
Okay.
contract.
Yes.
Sorry,
Okay,
You did the rough in the first place?
it wasn't thorough.
Okay.
Yeah.
so the only reason I even asked the question is, once I had said there's no employees, I said, this is a contract with a single consultant, and we're using almost a simplified form of our standard town contract. So it was like, boy, this is really overkill to contract with a single person, but the contract is not quite as complex as our normal standard town contracts, which is why I asked the question. So I feel like the contract, there's nothing wrong with it, it's just it felt like it was overkill.
The
But,
consultant contracts are a little simplified over about the purchase of the goods and services one that you typically see.
okay, so maybe that explains it.
She's happy with it. She signed it.
Okay, yeah, and, you know, again, because I'm a consultant, I also pay attention to this kind of stuff, and there's a provision that, this health, housing pathways can't use anything without our permission, and I'm sitting there saying, well, I bet you the questionnaire she's putting together is a questionnaire that she used somewhere else, and I wouldn't think that we would be overly possessive about allowing her to take the information. I don't know why she'd want to use it anywhere else. The questionnaire struck me as being something that chances are she's drawing from something to make this one, and we would probably be perfectly happy for her to then use that or some derivation of that. So that was those kinds of things that were a little bit more restrictive, and that was me reviewing it as a consultant who doesn't like to get tied down any more than I have to be in my contract, so that's all. And that is it. So
thank you.
we're on board. That sounds good.
No, I think it's great.
Do we need, so we need a
You need to
vote.
just vote to sign the
So we
contract.
need a
yeah.
motion?
I would move to sign the contract with the Autism Housing Pathways, Inc., for $3,000.
I second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That's approved. Anna Mae, the next item we have is a discussion of the school building committee application, but Anna Mae asked if we would wait for her to show up.
We have a revised agenda. Ron Gustafson's going to speak about the tolls.
Great.
About
Yes.
the what?
Excellent. Oh, am I, yeah. I'm-
Yep.
You're right. I'm
Oh,
reading.
okay.
Take care. Sorry, Ron, I'm using my old one, I have all my notes.
Yeah, for 2 years, we haven't done the toll road, the Lions Club, and it's a Saturday morning thing from 9 to noon, like 3 hours, and we'd like to bring it back on October 22nd. And we'll be in 3 places, down at the corner of North and Main, at the transfer station by the stop sign, and out in front of Blue Moon at a table. So we've got permission from the owners of Blue Moon. Well, we got the general manager to agree, and I'm going to check with the owners. And basically just asking for your permission to do it on a Saturday morning, and it's October 22nd.
Okay.
That's it.
Questions?
So I just want to make sure, is this where you're collecting old eyeglasses? Is that the?
No, we're
No.
collecting money.
Oh,
We'll be
collecting
out
money,
there
straight
with
out money. Oh, okay.
canisters. The one improvement we have this year is we printed out little cards with our Venmo account on it.
Ah, okay.
So we just give, if people don't have cash, we'll just give them the card, and that's fine.
You have collected used glasses in the past, haven't you?
We do that. We have
Okay.
a few locations at the senior center, I think, the library, and maybe at Shaw's. I don't know, there's a box
Okay, all right,
somewhere, yeah.
excellent.
So technically, you're just approving the public locations, the Shaw's Plaza is private property.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Pete?
No questions.
As past president of Kiwanis Club, I can support this.
This does go to just the eye research, to Mass Lions Eye Research Fund.
Oh, good.
So, motion?
I would move to approve the Lions request to hold a toll road project fundraiser on October 22 from 9 to noon at the indicated locations.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Excellent.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Ron. All right, now, to my original point, Anna Mae had asked if we would hold off our school building committee application process discussion until she gets here, and she said she was tied up, I think, till 8:15.
8:15,
I'm sure we
so-
can keep this meeting going.
Ha!
It's
I
long enough.
do not doubt that.
Okay, so we'll skip that for now. We're moving on to appointment of boards and committees. And I think that's just,
You asked for a discussion about
oh,
the bylaw.
yes, thank you, thank you. So I guess I should, seeing as I asked to put that on there, if you recall, in our meeting 2 weeks ago, we got into a discussion of the authority of committees
Oh, right.
to basically act autonomously once we had created them. And I think, Mark, you pointed
I
out.
wasn't there that night.
No, actually, it was Christine pointed
Here's
out,
me.
as we were talking
I was
about it.
pretending to be Mark.
Yes, she was doing a
We
good
had
job
a
too.
discussion, I believe
Okay.
Chris and I had discussed.
Yes.
So the issue is, in the context, I think, I came up not specifically because of the Energy Committee, but it was happened to come up on the heels of an Energy Committee discussion. I raised the question that said, well, when the selectmen basically form a committee, what is the obligation of the committee in terms, or what are the limitations on the committee's authority to basically submit articles on their own authority, take action autonomously? And my reaction is, as a committee, they should not, if the Board of Selectmen appoints a committee to work and advise the Board of Selectmen, then anything that committee does should be a recommendation of the Board of Selectmen, as opposed to, oh, once you create us, we're autonomous. However, the bylaw, as Christine pointed out, basically says any committee is autonomous. And while that makes sense for legally designated standing committees, I don't think it makes a lot of sense for created committees, but nonetheless, that's what the bylaw says. So the question I then had was, well, the three of us should have a discussion around what we want to do to basically get around the bylaw if we are not intending to create an autonomous committee. And I think, so the discussion here is probably whether what we need to do is actually not form committees, but rather form advisory groups or working groups or something designated that would not trigger that broad authority that the bylaw grants a committee, unless we actually intend for that committee to act autonomously, which I would consider would probably happen rarely. So I wanted to put that on the table to get the two of your reactions on that, because it just doesn't make sense to me that we do it, that it's set up the way it is, but the bylaw sets it up that way.
So I just have a question. So if it's done by a group of Medfield residents and they are interested in a topic that they bring forth to us and say, I think the town would be interested, and we say no, they're still residents of the town, which they could
Sure.
still bring it forward, right?
By
Absolutely.
statute, yes.
Yeah, the citizens petition, this doesn't cut down on a citizens petition. So if a private group forms a group, or if a private person wants to do it, there's no reason why they can't do that. The issue here is when you create a committee that's supposed to be advising the Board of Selectmen, and now that we've gotten a little more rigorous around charters, we actually oftentimes say, we want you to submit, if I think this is what we would do with the dog control bylaw committee, is we would say, what we'd like you to do is put together a draft article for inclusion in the May town meeting. But if that draft article were to come to us and we'd say, we don't think that's really the right article, I don't think it would be our intention to say, well, tough noogies, you created us, you can't stop us. It's like, that would not be my intention. If I were appointed to a committee by the Board of Selectmen, it would never cross my mind to do that. And yet we have committees that do that. And the bylaws, and they do it in accordance with our bylaws. So I'm not saying they're doing anything wrong.
Right.
I'm just saying I'm surprised to have learned that 2 weeks ago. And I don't think, in many cases, that's actually what I, as a selectman, would intend to do when I form a group. So the question is, how can you get around that if you don't actually intend to just create these? If we want to delegate our authority as selectmen to say, oh, once we create a committee, we just give you carte blanche, then that's a different story.
So I have a different take on it, I guess, than you do, Gus. I don't see it as giving them carte blanche, but I think that if we've delegated something to a group of people, group of residents to study and come up with a solution for, it doesn't offend me if they create a warrant article that they want to take to the annual town meeting and let the residents make a decision up or down on it. So I don't feel the need to control them by
Well, see,
having
that's where we
us.
disagree, that's where
Yeah,
we
I know.
disagree, Pete, because you're saying you don't mind delegating our authority for a committee to act autonomously, and if that's how we do it, then what you're basically saying is, well, then I only want to create committees that I'm absolutely sure I'm willing to do that for, and we will have very few committees, at least from my standpoint. I won't be willing to hand over my authority and my responsibilities as selectman to exercise judgment on behalf of the town to a group of people who want to take over, want to participate on a committee
Yes,
and
I
take
don't-
over the decision
So
process.
it's a different
It is a
viewpoint.
different- it is
Gus,
absolutely
I don't
is.
feel like
Yes.
I'm giving up my authority as a select
course
board
you are.
member to
Of course you
to
are.
let other
They're just-
residents in town take something to the town meeting. I mean, that offends you, it doesn't offend me. I'm very happy to, if I disagree with it, I'll
Right.
tell the people at the town meeting that I disagree with it, but,
Right. I do consider that you giving up your authority.
yeah. I know
Because
you're more
that's-
protective of that than I
yeah.
am. I don't feel the need as a select board member to
Yeah.
have that type of tight control over the committee, so.
Right. That's clear.
Mark, you want?
So I drafted that, I forget whether it was a charter or a bylaw, but whichever it is, the original intent was permanent town
Yeah.
committees, whatever you call them.
Mhm.
And you've had some, like in the Energy Committee, that have become permanent,
Mhm.
even though there's no other source of authority. If you've got strictly an ad hoc committee, which is an advisory committee,
Right.
and you make it clear as part of their charter, a limitation up front, I have no problem with them saying your authority is restricted as a committee to reporting back to the selectmen or making a recommendation to the selectmen or whatever you do, as opposed to an end around. That
Okay.
being said.
You're saying that
as-
even with our bylaw as it's worded,
Right.
if we in our charter make clear, so to my point, the dog control bylaw review committee's charter says your charter is to come to us with recommendations on revisions to our bylaw. So they would not be able to submit an article without our approval as the dog control bylaw review committee. They could have people on that committee submit a citizen's petition, but they wouldn't be able to act autonomously. So I'm fine with that, if that's what we're saying. I don't have a problem with the standing committees. But I was, given what we were just saying, it was, what Christine had read was that, well, if it's a committee,
No,
Okay.
that's, if, a liberal interpretation, that's what it says, but again, given the focus, if you focus that you are setting up a committee, which, a purely ad hoc committee, which is for a specific purpose for a limited time,
Yeah,
it's bracketed.
right?
It's
Yeah.
not, and like the Energy Committee, frankly, I think it started that way and kind of morphed into something. If it assumes a continuing life, now it's outside that restriction. So it's
Well,
up to you to.
yes and no, because you still have the scope of, like, the Energy Committee is a good one, because while the committee has been there for a long time, and in fact, its original charter talks about submitting articles, so there's no doubt about that. However, the decision about the expansion of the committee, there are implications of whether, and I'm not, in this particular case, my reason for raising this is not because of the Energy Committee, but you still, even there, would have issues around how broadly you allow a committee to expand its scope. Because if a committee, as it stands, already has certain autonomous authority, the idea that it's going to expand what it does, that is actually a separate series of decisions about whether to allow
A
it.
purely ad hoc committee
Okay.
is strictly advisory, it's subordinate, it doesn't have any inherent authority.
Okay,
And so therefore, it's subject to whatever limitations you put on it.
okay. But then my concern about looking for some other word to call them so that we didn't get cross-threaded with the bylaws, what it sounds like you're saying is, no, if you have an ad hoc committee, you're right into the charter that your job is to make recommendations, then my concern is taken care of.
Good.
So it keeps it easy. We can stick with committees. We just have to be good at charters, which I'm more than happy to. That works fine. Okay.
Good.
That was all I want to talk about.
All right, that's good.
All right, next, let's see, then, action items, I'm gonna go down, we have board and committee appointments. The first one is the Open Space and Recreation Plan Committee, appointing Lauren Beitelsbacher, which is the Parks and Recreation Commission's appointment to the Open Space and Recreation Plan Committee.
Do we need to vote her then if she's being appointed by Park and Rec?
I think she's being submitted by.
She was submitted by Park and Rec to you for your
I would move
approval.
that we appoint Lauren Beitelsbacher to the Open Space and Recreation Plan Committee.
Second that?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, okay, that's approved. Yeah, Pete, to your point, because I think it could potentially be an important one, is because a particular committee, and Mark, you check me on this if I'm wrong, because this will come in with the building committee. The revised building committee bylaw specifies certain people to be appointed to, in our case, two people. The bylaw tells us that we're supposed to appoint someone that's nominated by the planning board and by the permanent planning and building committee. I don't see a problem with that, but if they were to nominate someone that the selectmen disagreed with, I assume the selectmen still have the authority, as with the school committee, and Scott doesn't have it, to basically say, no, this is not the person. Well, the school committee wouldn't negate their own, so it's really just us. Although Scott's getting a warrant committee nominee, that the appointing authority would have the right to reject a person that the committee nominates, presumably for reason,
Well,
not for cause.
let's hope that doesn't occur
I
then.
don't have the wording in front of me to know for sure, but assuming that's what you said is accurate, it would be basically a veto power. So you
Yeah.
couldn't substitute somebody, you could
Yeah,
just
it would
say
be, you would just say no.
go back
That-
and,
yeah,
go back to the drawing
Right.
table and submit
Right.
somebody else.
right. Yeah, that would be, that's, right now I'm working off that assumption, because otherwise you have a bylaw that's overriding what I think is legal appointment authority, at least in the case of the Board of Selectmen. I don't think a bylaw can change the law.
Right.
So, but that makes it, I'm not suggesting that the appointing committee can say, no, we'll tell you who you're gonna pick, but, yeah, so it's a veto power. So that answers the question about why we just did that, Pete. The next one is an item to approve Norfolk Hunt Club's.
Before, Mr. Chair,
Sure.
before you go on to that, we had another appointment that we were, I think, going to take up to the Safety Committee. There were two people that were,
Yeah, I said no, we didn't want to do that yet because we actually have some additional people that wanted to be under consideration for the Safety Committee.
oh, well, we should address that.
I agree with that, yeah.
At some point soon.
There's actually two groups.
Yeah.
There was one that actually contacted us back in June, which is the Souls of Medfield. And we should have, you're right, we should have put them on a schedule to come in and talk. And then there's also a group of people, I think just from the Causeway Street area, that also wanted to come and talk. They weren't volunteering for the committee. They wanted to
No, they
come
wanna
and
come
talk
talk
to
to
the
you.
Board of Selectmen. So it doesn't make sense to.
There
make
were two
decisions.
people that specifically asked to be on the committee.
Yeah, and so did the Souls of Medfield as a group.
Yeah,
And I'm not sure whether the people from Causeway have requested it, so we haven't actually looked at the
Well,
candidates.
the two people that I'm aware of have asked to be on
Right,
it.
but the fact that two have and we need to fill two doesn't mean.
Yeah, so we
they're
need,
the
we
only
need
ones
to
we
get
look
them, yeah, we need to look at who's there.
So the next actions for us are gonna be to, well, first off, let's deal with the Souls of Medfield. You had talked to John Trigg.
Yes.
In June, I think it was. at the time, in that initial email that that he sent on behalf of the Souls Medfield, they were interested in being, being involved in this conversation around safety.
100%, yes.
And so I'm guessing that when you talked to John, that was still something they were interested in.
They were moving forward anyways, with if you drive around town and say, be sharing the road for,
Yeah.
I mean, so they were moving forward, making sure they were starting communication
Yeah.
and bringing and heightening awareness for safety.
Right.
But absolutely, we bring a committee together like
Right.
this to reach out and see what
Right.
members.
So that, as an organization that specifically expressed interest that we've sort of ignored so far, except for your conversation in my reply back in June. I don't know if you replied to, Pete. We ought to give them at least a chance to
absolutely.
express their interest. And then the Causeway Group, I think we're talking about the first meeting.
The first meeting in November. So I'll have
Good.
Brittany reach out and talk to them and have them come in. It should be a
Well,
light
can we have
agenda
it?
that
That
night.
one, I
Together
don't
would
know-
be-
I don't know if that one's actually, we want to be on the safety committee or whether that's a group of people in Causeway.
No, I think that's an overall discussion. Then Shane Medeiros had reached out and was interested in being on the safety committee as
Oh,
well.
okay.
So
We haven't seen, is there a letter or something?
has not sent a letter, was just expressed his interest, but no follow-up letter.
Okay. Can you?
Yep,
follow up?
I'll
So my point is we probably have at least two and maybe three.
Well, it sounds like there are four then, so that, and we might want to consider whether maybe we should make the safety committee bigger if
Yeah,
we've got people that are really interested.
We can, yeah, I think that's all, I think it's all on the table that we could do that.
Yeah, so if I'm interpreting this correctly, I think you have some people who are in the Causeway group that are actually part of Souls of Medfield. So I think hopefully both of them are going to be invited because
Yes.
you're going to have common resources there.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, and we actually technically have someone that's from that area that wants to be on already, so.
exactly. Perfect.
I'm just trying to rationalize, but make sure that people that have expressed interest don't get blown off.
Yep.
And just as an aside, on the Opeb Trust Fund, which is not on the agenda, so I'm just curious about status, we're not voting. We've advertised it for 2 weeks now, I believe.
We're 2 weeks today.
I
Yep.
know Steve Callahan's indicated he's willing to do it, and we've gotten the second.
We have a second one.
So what I would suggest is maybe at the next agenda, the next meeting, we have one opening on the Opeb Trust Fund. And and the discussions we had, Steve Callahan with his background would be excellent.
Right.
But we actually also heard from a relatively recent graduate from here and a young person who's interested in getting involved, and we can talk maybe in our next meeting. I don't know that we need to be so formal as to have associate members on the OPEB Trust Fund, given that we only meet about once a year, but as a person who may have some background in this area, but certainly has enthusiasm and kind of consistent with our goal
Yeah.
that we discussed about making it easier for younger people to get plugged into the town, that would be something we should maybe consider, either, to your point, Pete, maybe just having two positions there, even.
Absolutely.
If the interest is there. Okay. So that does it with appointments for now. The next item then is the Norfolk Hunt Club to conduct work on town property as part of the Millbrook Trail crossings. I think this is almost something that formally has to come before us to approve it. The Norfolk Hunt Club is in the process of rebuilding a bridge and two kind of boardwalk, it's almost like at-grade crossings through an area that's sort of wetlands, although actually it's going over some dry streams that presumably are only seasonal.
Yep.
Most of the land is not town land, but there is a little sliver of the land that is town land. So the reason that the Norfolk Hunt Club needs our approval is to carry this thing out
Simply out of
in
respect,
project
yeah.
in its entirety, including what's on our town land. Conservation Commission has already issued a declaration of negative, basically it's the Concom's assessment.
Negative determination
Of applicability.
with
So,
conditions probably.
so what that boils down to is the Norfolk Hunt Club went to the Concom and said, look, here's what we want to do. We want to replace some crappy stuff that's already there, because now that there's a rail trail, there's a lot of people that try to get to the Norfolk Hunt Club property by going down this side trail,
Yep.
which has an old broken-down bridge and some haphazard planks that are placed on the ground.
True.
And people are walking down those, and what we would actually like to do is replace the bridge with something not just suitable for people, but suitable for horses.
Yep.
And put a plank boardwalk across these other two crossings of this dry stream. And we think that it'll be, actually, A, it doesn't do any environmental damage. B, it actually be an improvement. Chances are it will result in less damage from people and horses walking through this somewhat sensitive area.
Yep.
Concom said it sounds fine to us. Deb Barrow from the Concom basically said, well, it's fine for us, but there is a piece of town land, and you need to get the Board of Selectmen approval to go ahead and do this. So,
Works for me.
So all you really have authority to grant is a license.
for them to carry the work out on the sliver of property that's
It's a
town.
license, though.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So I will entertain, unless, first up, any questions or?
No, I know I've walked through that muck, so I know
Okay.
exactly what they're doing, and it's long overdue.
Okay. Pete?
It's a different, it's a different spot than I thought it was. I thought it was behind the houses on Farm Street, but I see that it's much further down.
Right.
It's by the,
Said it's near the trains, the crossing signal, so it's not the, I don't think it's at the road crossing, but there's a, somewhere there's a signal on the,
they've got it in the middle of the, I thought it was right up here behind these houses on Farm
Yep.
Street, because that's,
Yep.
when I've been on that trail, I remember looking over and seeing the houses, but this apparently is in a different spot, because you wouldn't see the houses from where they're showing, but, yeah, I mean, it's a 12-foot section and a 6-foot section, so it sounds like it's something that's good to do
Mhm.
and get done.
So if we can have a motion,
So moved.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye, aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's approved. Next is a vote to approve the First Amendment to the use and regulatory agreement regarding a change in the breakdown of affordable units based on market demand for the Aura at 50 Peter Christoph Way, which was previously approved at a public meeting by the Zoning Board of Appeals on July 1st, 2022.
Boy, did this one surprise me, because when I read that, I thought, oh, no, more 3-bedroom units, but no, it's
No,
all the
it's
other
the
way.
opposite, right? It's just the opposite, right? Yes.
And the other piece on this is that I realized this was only looking, I was trying to figure out why it was only such a small number, but it's actually only looking at the.
Just the affordables.
Affordable
Yep.
units, so it's not the full Aura project, it's
Nope.
just the affordable units.
Just the affordable units.
So basically, they want to reduce one
Useful.
2-bedroom, one 3-bedroom, and add 2 1-bedrooms
Mm-hmm.
based on market demand, and I'm assuming that the law allows.
Allows you to do that, and it has been approved by the ZBA and approved by DHCD as well.
That's the most critical thing.
Right.
DHCD said.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's surprising, there's no demand for the 3-bedroom unit. I'm shocked,
Yeah.
actually, so.
Yeah.
But I would move that we vote to approve this First Amendment to the use and regulatory agreement.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, to vote to authorize Medfield Meadows and Medfield Hillside Village to increase affordable rents for these properties in line with their regulatory agreements, the HUD published 2022 income limits, and DHCD's August 22, 2022 notice on rent increases for LIP/LAU projects. And we had in our packet a 2-page letter
Yep.
from Seb Housing, which was a pretty decent explanation of what they were asking and what the background was. That was from David Cashman.
Right.
Any discussion?
So I think, I'm just trying to get to it. So at the end, there were basically 3 options for us to consider in terms of how the rent was to be broken down. And when I look at it, if you're looking for me to tell you where I'd be casting right now, I would look for option C, so that people that are currently renting would only see a 5% increase, but those that are renting new would be coming at market pricing. Makes sense to me, instead of whacking someone with a significantly higher increase. So that's I think that makes the most logical sense.
Pete?
I think that makes sense to me, too. I mean, there was a $400 increase it was a big percentage jump. So I guess that would be the preferable thing for me to have happen.
And I'm in agreement on that. That's, it's a big jump, but you have to recognize it's also after 2 years of no increases. And I think at least one of those was our decision a year ago, as I recall.
Yeah, we turned them down.
Last November, we turned them down and said we wanted to wait because we knew the new rates were coming, we knew new guidance was coming from DHCD. I just think for our existing residents to have a 25% rent increase, the option C was
Based on all that,
definitely,
yeah.
the option C was definitely more favorable, and I talked to David about that, and he was fine with the 5% increase, and any new tenants coming in would pay the new 2022
That's fair.
affordable rental rates. Yep.
Okay, and we have a,
I would move to authorize the two groups to increase their rents in accordance with their option C.
Second?
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries for option C. Which, if anybody wasn't paying attention to what Eileen said, is existing tenants can have their rents go up 5%, and new tenants can have their rents reset to the new market allowable rate.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see, next, we have a vote to sign a contract for fall cleanup at MSH in the amount of $21,800 with Shady Tree Landscaping and Irrigation, and I believe we got a attachment A in hard copy just before this meeting.
Oh, I didn't see it.
I thought you were hiding it. I kept like, it has to be in here.
He passed them out to everybody. And
It's exactly the same as last year.
it's the same as last year, that's helpful, so we don't
Yes.
need to do it.
Just different
in the
company,
quote.
but same.
Different, we put it out to bid, different company, would be awarded the bid tonight, but the fall cleanup services, exactly same as last year,
Good.
removing fallen branches, strict leaves. There'll be an on-site leaf composting available, brush will be removed, but we do allow them to bring that brush to the transfer station.
Perfect. I saw what last year's group did and did a great job, so if these guys are being asked to do the same thing,
Okay.
works for me.
They've done it before, they've been up there several,
What's that?
they've had several contracts.
Oh, yeah,
Are we switching providers?
yes.
Okay. Are they gonna do the big tree that's down on the main entranceway? Someone's cutting that up at this point, but,
I believe John Thompson is taking care of it, but
okay.
I don't know what his plan is, if he wants that to be included in this or not.
It's a fixed, we have a total price, so we know what.
Yep.
So it's not, trees added in, it's not gonna increase the cost. So have a motion?
Vote to sign the contract for the fall cleanup in the amount of $21,800 with Shady Tree Landscaping and Irrigation, Inc.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye, aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, the vote to authorize the town administrator to sign the rate sheet for Maya Health Benefits Trust Renewal Proposal for Retirees.
This is actually very good news for our retirees and for the town. We are not having an increase to the rates this year.
Yay.
So, and they were held at 0 last year as well. So they'll be paying exactly the same amount, which was $339.88 a month, and we split that evenly 50-50 with retirees.
Yeah.
So I was trying to figure out, when I looked at the total, I saw how the totals were the same, but I was sitting there saying, well, how does MedX 2 and Blue Med RX, like, is it 50% are on one, 50% on, why can you take rates and add them?
They're together, that's the same plan.
So it's the same
It's the same plan, it's
It's
just
two
the,
components
it's the
of the
drug,
plan.
yeah,
Okay,
it's the
so I
drug
got it,
part of it.
got it, okay.
Yep,
And coincidentally, they both went up and down by the same percentage.
right, so 0 again, so we appreciate that, given our tight budgets again this year and for our retirees.
Questions, Eileen?
No, I'm good with that.
No question.
Motion?
Move to authorize the town administrator to sign the rate sheet for the Maya Health Benefits Trust Renewal Proposal for retirees.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, sir.
Opposed? Motion carries. Let's see, do we have any citizen comment? Trying
Not this week?
to give Anna Mae some leeway here before we get back to the school building. She said 8:15 was when she was finished, but she didn't say whether she was in Chicago or whether she was just in Medfield, so we'll, okay, well,
Keep moving along.
let's see, consent agenda. We never move this fast. How did this happen?
Early morning.
You missed it.
Maybe we can revote a few things.
Oh, isn't that the truth?
We should revote a few things we've already approved.
No,
just
it's
to
making
make
up,
sure.
actually, I like what
Okay.
Bill just said, it makes up for the last meeting.
Yeah, for sure, yeah, no joke. And
Yes.
we've been here already. for
Yes,
July.
exactly.
Several items on the consent agenda. A request from Jean Minio to use the gazebo for an ice sculpture, I think, during the holiday stroll on December 2nd from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. Next, vote to allow Boy Scout Troop 89 to place a sign at the transfer station announcing the annual Christmas tree pickup and recycling program, and to all the transfer of trees, and to transfer all of the trees to the transfer station for recycling for the 26th year on the following dates: Saturday, December 31st, Monday, January 2nd, Saturday, January 7th, Saturday, January 14th, and Sunday, January 15th. And I noticed in the request that we got, Troop 89 said, we're not sure we're going to need all these dates, but we would appreciate it if you would let us use them. So it's not, for those who are wondering and they think they have till January 15th to take their tree down,
Might not be the
make
case.
sure you pay attention to what Troop 89 tells you. Next item, request for the placement of sandwich boards promoting the Angel Run, which will be held on Sunday, December 4th. For the last, the Angel Run, which will be held on Sunday, December 4th. The sandwich boards will be placed for the last 2 weeks of October at the following locations: North and Main and South Street / Route 27. Next is a request for a block party near 11 Ledge Tree Road for Saturday, October 15th, from 3 to 7 p.m. Most of the block parties are always like late summer. This is Oktoberfest, I guess.
Yes.
And then the last item is Zulu Gallery requests a one-day beer wine permit for October 22nd for a live music event fundraiser from 5 to 11 p.m. Having reviewed the minutes, I would point out that those people that are asking for these one-day beer wine permits, when we say we approve it, it automatically comes with a requirement for you to have a plan for recycling materials that are recyclable.
Yes.
So,
I would move the consent agenda, Mr. Chairman.
I would second that.
all those in favor?
I,
Aye. Opposed? Okay, that's approved. Next, meeting minutes, September 7th, 2022, and September 13th, 2022.
I did September 7, but I'm in the middle of September 13, I'm afraid. I haven't finished those.
Okay.
September 7th, that was our
That was the working, the
Yeah.
working meeting, workshop.
So I was going through those minutes. I told you guys how I do this. I literally watch the YouTube and
Yep.
kind of follow it.
Yep.
And to be honest, I had Mark in the back of my brain. There's a lot of discussion that is you can't see anywhere in the notes. So I'm struggling with how do I insert it? There's a discussion that goes on for quite some time that we don't highlight at all. So I was watching it today and I'm like, I've got to watch it again and figure out what parts we put in. So if someone's going in, I know you said, Mark, like you just can't say like a very general thing. You need to at least bring in highlights if somebody's looking through
Fair
it.
summary.
Yeah,
So it's not enough to say a lengthy discussion occurred.
doesn't cut it.
No.
Yeah. And there was, so it was, when we wrapped up your goals, but then we started talking, like it was after Chris spoke, it was like Bob Sliney spoke, and then we went on for a while, and none of that is captured in the notes, and that's what.
Well, you know what we should do in that point? We'll send that back to the recording clerk and have them take another look at it.
Okay,
Yeah.
if that's how you want to do it, okay, because
That's
to me,
fine.
it just, I had Mark in the back of the brain reading, I'm like, I can't really approve this, because we're missing a lot. And there were good discussions, too, like all about, Hilly talked about, like, bringing in the school kids, and just a lot, so that's why I'm not approving that yet.
Okay, so I'm, or Pete, you did 7th. You have comments, anything beyond what Eileen just brought up for the 7th?
Well, I did have some edits on the 7th, but I haven't finished looking at the 13th yet. I didn't have time, I'm sorry.
So I've looked at both. I had comments on both, and Eileen, I think I did the same. There's a couple places, and this isn't the first time we've had minutes like this. The issue is, how long do you want your minutes to be, and how much of it needs to be a transcript, especially when you know there's a recording of everything. And so I've sort of been ambivalent on how, sometimes I want words in there because I recall there was a very important point that I wanted to make, or I felt like what was here conveyed an impression that I thought was inaccurate. And then other times I've said, well, it just talks about the vote here, but if it's probably a lot of those that, well, yeah, we went for 20 minutes, and it was really good. And if people really want to see it, they should go on the video and watch it as opposed to have it all get transcribed. So I don't know, you raise a great issue. I know that I kind of do or don't react to those situations almost as the spirit moves me at the time. And I try to be consistent, but I don't know if it has something to do with the mood I'm in or where we're at, so. I
But,
get your
but I'll
point.
ask you, I mean, the difference is, and we all do
Yeah.
our things differently. I literally watch the YouTube, and then I'm
Yeah.
going along the notes, and I'll go, I went, I think, 20 some odd minutes. I was like, I almost got lost where we were, because you couldn't
Right.
follow. There was a really good dialogue when we started
Yeah.
talking, and I was like, okay, I think we'd want to at least say bullet points of what was captured, especially by the citizens. It was
Yeah.
more citizens than us. And so just each goal that we talked about, it was kind of hard to follow the goals with what we were actually saying. And
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
of all things, it's our goal meeting,
Right.
right? That's why it was go ahead, Mark, I can tell you.
No, I didn't. So my comments to Selectwoman Murphy a minute ago, that's not my opinion. That's the Division of Open Government. So you do not have to be the level he said, she said. But you need to be sufficient detail so that somebody who was not there gets a accurate sense of what transpired at the meeting. So it's a balancing thing.
Yeah. So it sounds like then maybe we'll, Pete hasn't done the second one. I've got, I think my comments, and I think maybe your comments are there. So both of our comments are in both sets of meeting minutes, such as they are written right now. But if we're returning the workshop might be the more likely one that needs the lengthy discussion,
Yes.
because it was a workshop.
Yeah.
Where the other one might not be quite as big of an issue.
Yeah, I'm almost done with the 13th.
Okay.
So I would say
So
next
let's-
one.
then I think we defer both of those.
Okay.
And it sounds like possibly we will see another iteration of the 7th of September at some point after the recording secretary records more.
Well, and Chris, I don't mind going in and just kind of putting my nuggets of the gist of the conversation that I think led to, a lot of it had to do with the workshop 101 and things that we could be doing that you don't see if you don't pick up unless you watch
Right,
YouTube.
unless you're watching it.
Okay,
Take a look at that.
so both of those are deferred for right now. And let's see, next item, so we deferred those, town administrator update.
A couple of things. I wanted to let you know, we have hired a replacement for Nick Milano as the Assistant Town Administrator. We have hired Frank Gervasio from the Department of Revenue, and his new start date will be November 14th. So we're looking forward to him starting.
Excellent.
And then I have my first formal town administrator update to you.
All that.
That's
Which will
very
be-
cool, thank you.
You're welcome. Which will be posted on the website tomorrow. We tried to give you little pieces of information that you might not know, things that we don't normally talk about, that are going on behind the scenes. So we'll get that posted. I just wanted to put a few links in there before we post it to the town's website, so we'll get that done tomorrow. And just a reminder again, that our next two meetings will be at the high school due to early voting. So
Okay.
on October 25th, we'll be at the high school, and November 1st, we'll be at the high school.
Chris, you might want to include that assistant town administrator on this, too.
Okay. Let's see, next. So you've already talked about the next meeting dates, Selectmen Reports, Eileen.
Alrighty, so since we last gathered, went to the lovely Rail Trail grand opening, which was fun. The weather held off, so that was awesome. Went to the Hops for Hinckley gathering. They had that next day, that Sunday. Fantastic turnout. I'm so happy for the Hinckley helpers. Great turnout. The silent auction was extremely successful. So all good there. Had a chance to meet, and actually, Pete, you're familiar with this. I met with Kirsten Poehler, and she was talking to me about the idea of trying to bring all of the nonprofits together. So when we think about the food cupboard, and we think about the Lions, and we think of all these groups around town that they all are working for the community. But she's like, I don't know, have they ever gotten around a table and had a representative to then say, this is our goal, this is our mission, because as there may be needs that maybe MFI is not even aware of, or directions that groups are going. So I thought it was a fantastic idea, and she might have already reached out to you, Chris, did she? Oh, okay. She was going to, because I think there are a few other groups that she certainly wanted to reach out to. But I personally encouraged it because I think it's great when you I think of it as almost like the Medfield community connection, right? Where there's so many people and so many groups that are trying to do things for this community. And sometimes you're so focused and you don't mean to put yourself in a silo, but you end up being in a silo. And yet you may have the Lions doing something that could benefit the food cupboard, and then some other things going on that, like if we all get around the table and you realize that maybe the food cupboard has a goal for something and somebody else has got extra dollars from a fundraiser that they have that they could help towards that cause, let's keep the lines of communication open. So I think I gave her the tidbit of maybe the Medfield Insider might be a bad place to like. Oh, okay, perfect, even better. Okay. And then I attended our monthly Affordable Housing Trust meeting last Thursday. I think the big thing, we had the group for 441 Main come and present the plan. It was an opportunity for the abutters to come and have any questions. I went to the actual abutters meeting a few weeks before that. So all of the abutters that have come in with support. The fact that the building looking at Avenue to the right will get completely rescreened, the windows done, it'll look completely fresh on the outside, 2 new units. Like they were here last week for us. I think I forget what the next checkpoint is off the top of my head, for them to continue to move forward.
I'm not sure. I haven't seen what the next step is, yeah.
But
let me talk to Sarah.
It's going in the right direction. All is good. And then I participated in the Pansiaco alumni softball game. Jerry did witness my softball skills. I will not be recruited in the near future. No, but I'm a good cheerleader. And then hopefully you guys got the letter regarding Madeline Rustein's Eagle Scout ceremony coming up in November, which is exciting. So we'll put together a proclamation for that, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I thought the rail trail dedication was a wonderful event. I was just thrilled with it. It had Ted Rydstein as sort of
Yes.
the MC for that, because I like him a lot, just from watching Chronicle all these years. I also went to a dedication, might have been the next day even, for the man who founded Riverside Community Care, Scott Bach. They named a building, Scott died a year ago, and they named a building after him in Somerville. So I went to that, which was, for me, it was a very meaningful, because I saw these people that I hadn't seen for 20 years since I left the board at Riverside. Medfield Foundation Legacy Fund had a meeting that I went to. I had office hours last Friday. Had a couple people come to that, and I actually went to the Culture Fest on Saturday or Sunday. I don't know, one or the other. Saturday probably.
In my case, the day after our last meeting, the State Hospital Development Committee had their meeting. The committee has kind of gone to a quarterly, at this point with Trinity carrying the project forward, the committee is staying intact because they're in a position to help facilitate the process if the process needs to be facilitated. And we've kind of agreed we'd meet about once a quarter just to touch base, make sure we knew what was going on. So I think the committee meeting that we had, as much as anything, I think of it as a steady as she goes meeting, that we were just touching base. Everything seems like it's on track. Christine just stepped out here. Keep going. I was gonna just. Oh, okay. Oh, good. So I don't have. I'll just extend this a little bit longer, and then she'll be here. This is good. One of the things that the discussions are starting now is at the state level. With trying to look at the possibility of a MassWorks project to help support some of the infrastructure and the remediation costs. So there's a lot going on, and I think that it's a lot of work, but I think Trinity certainly sounds like they're up for the work. They've been busy already assessing things and developing plans. So I think for this early stage in the process, things sound like they're going well. I think the rubber will meet the road more heavily somewhere down the road once we actually have some stuff, and clearly getting some form of state support is probably going to be crucial to having this be a successful project. And the state has every reason to want it to be a successful project. On the, I think it was the 1st of October, was the CAM performance, the first of the October weekends. And so my wife and I, and our dog, went down in the latter part of the afternoon. I have to tell you, there's just some good groups coming in there. There was really nice music on that app. We heard the next to the last and the last group before we went out to the north field with the dog, and it's just excellent music. Particularly what was playing on that Saturday, there was a younger crowd there than some of the other performances, but I was talking to my wife, and it's like, I'm really surprised more high school kids don't show up for this stuff, because this is real deal music here. This is not just, I can see how some stuff maybe wouldn't be the favorite, but that stuff 2 weeks ago was really good music. So that's still going along well, and I do think that it's successful. We ran through all our jokes anime, and we were out, but we got here just in time. No, you're fine. You're fine. And then I also was at the rail trail ribbon cutting, so we were all there for that. I was very impressed at the turnout.
Yeah.
I think there were about 50, I would say 50 people there. I saw everybody setting it up the night before. I drove by to go to the transfer station like 2 hours before the event. And there was a good number of people there getting everything, set up. I think Troop 10 was the ones that set up the chairs and all that, so they supported it that way. Thought it was a great event. I think the rail trail itself, I'm just fascinated. It's the only rail trail I've seen that has that bright colored surface. And every time I go by it, I look up through the woods, and it's like, if it was a little yellower, it would be follow the yellow brick road yellow, and it would really be cool. But it's just a really nice color. I hope it stays that bright color, because it's cool. And driving by there, usually I drive by a couple times a day. I always look up and down to see if there's somebody on the trail, and I would say 80% of the time, that trail is being well used. And
It was well used during the rail trail opening.
Yeah.
There were people.
Yeah, we were afraid. There was this one guy running. It's like, don't you go break that tape. This is not a race. So this guy go flying down. It's like, where's the ribbon? Because he just went down this whole thing. So anyway, I think that's a great asset. Kudos to all the people that put the effort into it. As the initial skeptic of the pedestrian crossing signs, because of what I thought they were talking about, they're great signs. I love what they've done. They're wonderful signs. It's a big help for that crosswalk. And so the committee has done a tremendous job over a number of years to pull that together. With that, we have one last item on the agenda, which is the school building appointment process, committee appointment process. So you are well timed. We were all the way down to Selectmen Reports, and all I had was informational stuff. I could have probably read a few. There's like 30 pages of it. I probably could have started reading that. But,
Now I would cut you off.
so, okay, so I guess, yeah. So now we're back to the one item we skipped over, which was the school building committee appointment process. Anna Mae had reached out before the meeting and just said if there's any way you could hold off that conversation, I'd like to be here for it. And so we successfully did this. We usually go till 10 o'clock. I mean, you said that. It's like, oh, Anna Mae, we're not going to get past like the opening item by the time you get here. But you have to go
Your microphone, when you,
Oh, yeah, you will.
Remember,
That's
we
right
have
next
been
to
here
you.
since 5, though, just remember.
Yeah, I know, but I didn't think this was even going to be a stretch. It's like, so I think this is on the agenda just to have a general discussion about the school building committee appointment process. Had the AG request a further delay in the review of the bylaw, and so now that delay takes it out to the 16th of November. So I'm so I think it's an open discussion. I'm guessing that one of the items we'll probably talk about is revising the deadline for applying to be on the committee for sure. And then I guess maybe just the process. Yep, Mark?
Yeah, please.
So I had a conversation with the assistant AG last week, who I have a good working relationship with. Impressed upon her the time-sensitive nature, and she was going to attempt to get it done and to us this week. I'm further optimistic from our conversation that they're going to approve it, but she had to check a few things.
Okay.
Now, if they did not approve it, could we still move forward and use the spirit of the bylaw to just continue as is, or do we have to rethink the whole thing?
So I think if they don't approve it, we revert back to the original bylaw.
Okay.
So part of your question is, how would we go about using the previous bylaw? To what extent could we, it seems to me it would be responsible to maintain the spirit of the new bylaw.
It would be irresponsible?
No,
or
responsible,
Okay,
to
good.
try to maintain the spirit.
Yes.
There would be, because I've thought this one through already, and it's like there'd be a couple things that are not going to be the same. The warrant committee member would be not a voting member. I guess there would be 2 permanent planning and building committee members. I think that's what they had originally. So there'd be a few things that would sort of be automatic that weren't automatic before. But in terms of I would think that in terms of represent, and then we'd have the issue of who the appointing authority is, yeah.
I think that's more the driver, because we know from before that the makeup of the existing permanent building committee was not satisfactory to MSBA. So they have the mix they want to see, and they leave it to you locally for how those
Yeah, but
folks.
we're not in, yeah, but we don't have an MSBA project yet.
Well, no, but if,
So the MSBA requirements would be add-ons to what we would do here.
if you start with a committee and it doesn't pass muster down the road with the MSBA, you're gonna,
Well,
so.
Well, I don't think we're gonna wait 4 years to find out whether we're in the MSBA. If the MSBA says you need to add people, I think we deal with it at the point in time that we come. I don't think we would put anybody on the committee that the MSBA would look at and, go, not that
No,
one.
it's not that, it's the mix they wanna see. They've got their own criteria for diversity, if you will.
And if
And I use
if
that in
and
a very
when.
broad
yeah,
sense.
But if and when we are at the point where we're looking at becoming being readmitted to the MSBA program, we deal with that. If there was like I'm saying, if there was something that we are contemplating doing before that would be prohibited by the MSBA, I think we'd want to know that and probably try to avoid that. But I don't think we're planning to come up with an MSBA compliant
Right.
committee just in case somewhere down the road that they bring us into the program.
Right.
I mean, I think we want to get this underway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
So, just to Gus's point, if all goes according to plan, we will move forward, appoint. If this does not pass, do we move forward in the spirit of this bylaw that was passed? And if we are accepted into the MSBA, we would then add folks. I think the folks that have been assigned into the bylaw are folks who would, maybe except for the over at 65, MSBA, I think, would like to see those folks on the committee, people with building experience X, Y, and Z. Am I not correct? Wouldn't
I
you
think
say
are.
so?
Yeah.
I didn't bring their regulation with me tonight specifically, but they have a number of categories that
Yes,
they want to see.
yes, no, I
So
remember that,
And the problem with the other one was, most of those weren't represented.
yeah.
So you have to address that. And so I suppose the downside of moving forward, if you get accepted into the MSBA, how much of what's already been done then has to be redone to meet the, if any, to satisfy their requirements.
Well, so the only thing that I know that Jack stressed with me when I met with him that morning is, don't spend money for things until you're working with us, because you may spend money and think you're gathering data that you can't apply. But I would think that we can bring people together, because we shouldn't plan that we're going to bring people together just to meet the MSBA's requirements, versus we need to bring people with the right skill sets, that representing the demographics that we're asking for, to come together regardless, because that's going to send the right signal to this town so that we can inch towards that unified approach. And then we get there, then there's a higher likelihood that the MSBA will bring us in, because they're seeing that we're moving ahead. And I think what you were just inferring is, we're bringing the people that are going to be on the list and there may be a one or two that get added, but it wouldn't change the structure, the momentum and the,
So what he's talking about in terms of expending money, and you may recall this from before, is there's certain studies that have
Right.
to be undertaken by professionals.
Right.
And they're significantly 100,000 plus.
right,
And so that's probably what he was saying, don't do that
Right.
before you got the okay from us to move ahead, and you could end up finding out that didn't meet our requirement.
right.
So I think there's a difference in this, and Anna, you can weigh in on this too, as school committee member. I think there's a difference in the dynamics that we're dealing with right now in this project. In the project that we just had, we waited until the MSBA admitted us to the program, and then we launched a project. And we waited, as I recall, it was from the time we first applied, 10 years? So I don't
Something
see
like
us
that.
waiting 10 years to see if the or even necessarily 5, to simply see if the MSBA is going to admit us. We actually, I think, this time around, have to move forward. And the tricky part is, that means you're moving forward with a design, this is me speaking, not even you guys necessarily agree. You need to move forward with a design which may or may not be supported by the MSBA. Which means if the MSBA doesn't come in by the time we want the school, then we're looking at trying to pay for school on our own. Now, if we design a school on our own and then the MSBA admits us, and we sit there and have a conversation with the MSBA about how we might modify that design to meet whatever MSBA requirements are, and the MSBA comes in and says, and we'll pick up 25% of that cost of that slightly more expensive project that you added these things on. Well, that's wonderful, because then we're going to be able to have a Parks and Rec facility discussion sooner rather than later. But if they don't do that, we also have to be prepared to just sit there and say, this thing is going to be a town-funded project, and we have to design a school that's going to fit that. Because I don't think we can wait 5 or 10 years just to kind of get started. We have to do
Completely
it
agree.
now.
Completely agree.
So, again, back to your original point, so there'll be we'd be guided, or, the original bylaw would tell us what we have to do. A couple things about that bylaw would prescribe that we have to do things that are different than what the revised bylaw told us we were gonna do. But I'll say regardless of who that appointing authority is, speaking again as one selectman, I would think we would wanna do everything we could to basically make decisions that reflect the intentions that were behind the revised bylaw, even if we don't comply with the specific instructions from the revised bylaw, because the AG blew it out of the water for some reason. So
It's unlikely from my conversation.
helpful to know.
Very unlikely.
Okay, that's good
that's
to know,
helpful
but
to
it's
know.
also good to have the discussion, the what if.
Right.
And I think
Yeah.
that sounds like a logical plan. So, so this October 18th deadline for the initial application process, with this extension, I think it would be fair to extend that. I would love to have a committee formed before Thanksgiving.
Oh, sure.
I was gonna say we should extend the deadline to Thanksgiving.
I'm just thinking that's just
But-
too far out.
But if the AG, right now, all we know is the AG is 16th.
Yep.
Thanksgiving's the next week.
But if I'm hearing
And
Mark
you're gonna need a
say,
couple of weeks to form the committee, so.
Well, but
I'm
Mark's-
only picking Thanksgiving because it's a date that everybody
Yeah.
will register. It's not
Yeah.
that. there's
I mean,
nothing
Mark's
sacred
telling
about
us that it's probably gonna get approved this week, so.
so even if we hear by the 21st, we could still try to have the cutoff by, before Veterans Day, because then you get, the closer you get to,
So we don't know what's actually gonna happen. Mark had a conversation. Or if we're gonna make plans on what Mark got as an indication from an assistant AG, I think that's a mistake. If
Okay.
you wanna pick that back up, when our next meeting will be in 2 weeks,
Okay.
and then we'll either know
Okay.
whether it did or didn't, that's fine,
okay.
but
So what date? Because I would love to get something out. We just did a little perfunctory post in the Hometown Weekly. It would be great if we were just a bit more aggressive with our publicity and, the patch, what
so
have
what we
you.
know is the AG's asked.
Yeah,
for
so
this.
what I'm asking is what date should we use then as,
So I picked Thanksgiving, it's the very next week. and-
Okay.
But I'm just, it's not like I cared, I just said, well, that's a week, everybody will be able, they hear Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
they'll, in their heads, they'll say, oh, I've got a deadline of Thanksgiving, so that was why I picked that. It's nothing sacred about it. When we did the one for October, we said, well, the deadline would be 2 weeks after we got the
Yes, yes,
approval.
yes, I
That would put
understand.
you out to the end of November, and then we'd be talking about the 1st of December. So I was trying to accelerate it, but not, I'd rather not basically have yet another false start, and then, okay, it's not that deadline
No, I
either.
agree. All right, so,
I would suggest that
24th?
if we're gonna hear from the AG this week, that then we send it out 2 weeks from the 18th to the November 1.
Well, I think if I heard you just now, Gus, you said, we've got another meeting on October 25th. So on October 25th, we check with the status, where are we at?
Yeah.
And then we could change
Yeah,
the date
if we
accordingly.
if we have the answer on
Yeah.
if it comes in, sure. But our action for us would be the 25th. And so, yeah, then that would put it, presumably we would at least have we'd probably pick a deadline, like the AG's deadline of all applications in by the 16th.
so are you saying to wait until your meeting on the 25th to pick a new deadline for the application?
I'm not, I'm
Had
saying
Mark
pick
not been
November
here
1.
Had Mark not been here tonight, or had Mark not had a conversation,
Yeah.
we would be working off an 18 November deadline for the AG.
16, yeah.
I'm sorry, 16 November deadline for the AG. So
Correct.
all up until 5 minutes ago,
Yeah.
I said, well, that's the deadline. They've already extended it twice. Therefore, why don't we make the deadline Thanksgiving, which is about a week after that deadline?
Yep.
And even there, you're assuming they won't have a further extension. Now, Mark has said he talked to the assistant AG, who it sounded like was going to get this
Push
to us
it.
next week. Okay, if that happens, then if it comes in next week, yeah, I'm saying our next conversation would be the 25th of October.
And then the 25th of October, you're proposing then to choose a new deadline date? But I suppose my concern is that the original published date is October 18th, and so you're meeting on the 25th, we're going to stay silent. I would like to get
Until 5 minutes
information.
ago, I would have said, let's make it
I realize that,
Thanksgiving.
Gus. I
Yeah,
realize that. So
So what we-
what I'm proposing is that let's pick a date. If we're thinking November 16th is what their letter says,
Mm-hmm.
should we just pick then Thanksgiving Day, November 24th, as our new deadline? Instead of yet waiting again, instead of waiting to put out a press release and, oh, we made a mistake.
If you're gonna, so it's, right now it's what?
November 6th,
right now
October
it's-
18th.
All right, so that's before your next meeting, right?
Yes.
So if you really wanted to be aggressive, you could just extend it to a date shortly after your next meeting, and then address whatever happens at your next meeting.
Yeah, that's my November 1 date.
So first, there's an October 18th, then there's an October 26th, and then maybe there's
Yeah,
an October or
no.
something else. That's my only, I mean, you're making my argument, which is it's better to keep the messaging simple.
Exactly.
But I mean, we can give an updated deadline on a biweekly basis,
That just
depending
seems
on what
silly, don't you
reality
think?
turns into. I just don't see that that's getting us a whole lot. I do agree with you. It'd be nice to at least know who we have on the committee by Thanksgiving.
And I suppose it would be great to just have a date, so that we're not constantly changing.
Yeah.
And I know these are beyond, this is beyond our control, what the AG does. So maybe we think of, all right, worst case scenario, November 16th. Let's extend it to November 24th. We can start pushing it out and getting people hopefully to apply.
I think the people that are going to apply have already made up their mind. and-
I don't think a lot of people
No,
know.
no, I
It was
haven't.
just a little thing in the Hometown Weekly. It was a Facebook thing. It was a tweet. I don't think we've put our best forward
Yeah, I
in
don't-
terms of
In fact,
recruiting.
How many, do you have applications?
Due.
So that answers that question.
Right.
2 applications for 12 slots.
So would you think it's wiser, though, to have the cutoff the day before Thanksgiving instead of on a holiday? It's kind of.
Yeah, sure.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah, I just kind of, it's like, could you
Will-
imagine
will-
somebody getting
were you-
last minute and calling you on Thanksgiving, like, I'm trying to get this in?
Like, don't pick
No,
up.
I can't. Actually, I can't. Never mind.
Well, actually, as a matter of fact, what's gonna be the story with Town Hall, open, close, leading to the holiday? Because the deadline should run out when the Town Hall is still legally open.
if somebody sends an email on Thanksgiving that's timestamped Thanksgiving. Is somebody going to be
Thank you.
working these things on Friday
No.
after Thanksgiving?
100%
Saturday
no.
after Thanksgiving? Sunday after Thanksgiving? So we're picking a date. It's kind of like doing your income taxes. It's got to be postmarked. It doesn't have to literally be there. It just has to be postmarked.
Yeah, because we're not reading it
So-
that day.
No,
No. So I'm cool with,
Yeah.
just if we can just pick one date.
right. And I will not, if you two think there's a date you want to go with, I will not fall on my sword that it has to be Thanksgiving. I only pick Thanksgiving because the messaging is simple, and it kind of fit with the 16 November. So I don't plan to be reading applications on Thanksgiving either.
No, but I mean, okay, so to Eileen's point, let's just choose the 23rd. How about that? The day before Thanksgiving.
Perfect.
What's it matter?
Perfect. It's updated live. We're good.
23 November.
23.
Great,
So 1 week after the deadline. There's
Yes.
logic there, okay?
that's cool. And hopefully, we will be inundated with applications.
Yeah. And then, okay, so then what's the next steps? We get the applications, we bring people together. Is the intent to try to have the first group, so right now there's only 2, and there's more slots than there are people that have applied. Which is
Yes.
part of the education.
Yes,
Um,
yes. So how I understand it is then they will all come in, the thousands of applications that'll come in. Then Gus and I, or both committees, will get, we'll see who has applied, and we will check off who we would like to interview, which brings me another thing. Are you folks planning on selecting members via interview or solely via their CV packet?
I would assume that we would look at the packets that are applying. So there's a bunch that'll come into a central repository. Some of those will be appropriate for us to review as people with building experience. There could be overlap with
Yeah,
others, but
exactly.
there could be
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Either we will be able to determine, this is me speaking, this is
Mm-hmm.
not me dictating here. Either we'll be able to take a look at resumes and it will be obvious who the strongest candidates are, in which case you don't need to interview. Or at our option, if we say, gee, there's a couple people here that look sharp, we want to bring them in and talk to them, then I think we do an interview.
Okay.
I do think the decision is the appointing authority's decision to make, so trying to, it ought to
Our
be
point
the
from
way you'd like to do it.
school committee's vantage was, because again, I spoke to the folks at Longmeadow, they interviewed, and the point was brought up, and if we're doing interviews and they're not doing, interviews, are we having a fair process? And I don't know, I'll ask,
I don't know.
So I don't know if it's a big deal, but,
See, when we say fair process, I don't know what fair means when what we're trying to do, we've got a multi-tens of millions of dollars, even if it's the small project, it's still multi-tens of millions of dollars. This is not an issue of, community participation. This is, we need people who can actually come together with different perspectives and a commitment to collaboration and an ability to understand and listen to people with different expertise and craft a huge project that'll be extremely important to the schools. So I don't know what fair even means in that. I would be ruthless about the absolute best people we can get. And I don't know who would figure that out, but we got 3 different, we have 3 different appointing bodies under the revised bylaw
Yep.
who are appointing different kinds of people who start off, like you guys may be one of the best prepared, school committee picking 2 of your own to be on the committee and then picking 2 more people that you think would be good representatives of education. At least that's all in your wheelhouse. 3 of us are going to be picking people that we think are going to be good at building buildings and schools. And Scott is looking for a mix of demographics and community and, parents or adults. And so we each bring whatever expertise we have and whatever advice we can get from people that do have the expertise. I'm assuming everybody is tapping people that they know that actually know what the heck they're talking about in this area and
Yes.
getting advice. So,
okay, so, fair. Question though, so if our application, again, in terms of the communication, the holistic kind of communication. So if applications are due on the 23rd, it's a holiday, we'll need some time to review. Do you think it's fair to say we anticipate to announce the members by December 15th? Is, again, thinking about the holistic messaging versus piecemealing information out. Is that fair?
I'll start, but I'm doing the talking, and I think that's okay, unless you guys want to cut me off.
So if we're thinking about, all right, due day before Thanksgiving, no one's doing, hopefully you're enjoying your families during the holidays. Then come, early December, we are reviewing applications, we are reaching out to folks, having conversations. Is December 15th realistic, or is it January 1st?
So I guess what I'm concerned about in this is being transparent. So we get the applications in. Are we going to let the citizens of Medfield know these are all the people that applied? And then we're not meeting face to face with everyone that applied. We're going to look at the ones that we think are the best fit for what we need. Are those interviews that are done on Medfield TV so people can see, or is
I don't see us necessarily doing interviews unless we choose to do them.
Well, I would think that we wouldn't just read off a paper. Like any job you go for, you meet them in person and you ask them more questions, and there's only so much you can put down on paper.
I'm not sure that's, I mean,
That's why I'm asking
when
the
I say
question.
I'm not sure that we're doing it, what I'm really saying is I don't think we should commit that our process for deciding is to bring all the people who apply in for an interview.
Maybe
If
not
we-
all the people, but
Well,
as
on
you
what basis
screen
are you-
interviews.
Yeah, I mean, so it goes
Are
back
you
to what I was
screening?
saying.
Yeah.
If you are making a discriminatory decision about who you think it's worth bringing in, then I'm saying, yeah, at the option of the appointing authority, you would bring in, if you think you need to talk to people to figure out who you want, then you would do that.
Well, and I know that we can't meet unless we're in front of the camera. So that's the only reason I'm getting it is, so will we be doing it? I'm not sure how you'll be doing it, but will we be doing it?
You don't have to be in front of the cameras, you just have to be open to the
You know,
public.
maybe-
Okay, so it might not be on Medfield TV, but it can still be. It's still-
So
still be
Long Meadow
recorded.
did the interviews, but they did not have it, televised. It was an open meeting, posted, and people are welcome to come. And they said that worked well. It wasn't on public display, but if you were curious, you come.
And all I'm saying is I don't automatically know whether we have actual in-person interviews or whether, imagine if you have 5 people apply, 2 of them have in-depth building experience and 3 of them kind of would like to do it. And we're charged with picking people who have in-depth building experience. So if their qualifications are clear and you don't have multiple people that have the same level of qualification, I'm not sure what you're interviewing for.
Yeah, I
Well-
think you're right, Gus. I think it's an iterative process, and we'll see where we are when we get there.
Right.
And we may want to talk to people, and
Right.
we may not feel the need to do that.
There,
There's also going to need to be a process of collaboration between the appointing authorities if we're all working off the same pool of applicants. And so we're going to have to, but I think we can build time in to do that between the 1st and the 15th. I think the 15th works as a
I
as a
think it
time to
will.
get it done.
I think, so where my head is, we would need to have 2 meetings. The first, either it's a really straightforward process and we figure it all out in the first meeting, which is is it 1st of December? I forget what the first,
We're meeting on the 6th.
6th of
6th
December.
and the 20th. Yeah.
And the 20th, so it might be better if it was the 20th, not the 15th. But what I'm saying is, we could need to have 2 meetings, one to review things, and then if in that review process, we suddenly say, gee, we got to set up some interviews, that's probably the second meeting. But on top of that, I think what we've talked about, Anna Mae, is that probably none of the appointing authorities, Scott can do what he wants, but we probably don't want to pull the trigger on all of the appointees without knowing who the other appointing
Yes.
authorities are planning to appoint, because some of these candidates could possibly actually have skills in more than one of the areas, and that might shade
Yes.
who you would go with in your area if you knew that somebody over here had the secondary expertise. So we ought to all know what people are thinking about doing before we finalize. Then we can appoint them all at once.
Yeah.
So you do all the work, but I don't think you actually do the formal appointments until we've had a chance to coordinate.
Okay. So December 15th is not a good date.
Or we can decide to have, if it makes sense, we can decide to have two meetings in a row. It would be 3 in a row if it's the 15th, but the 20th. But we could decide, did one of us have a problem with, Did you have a
I'll be in
problem on one of
Chile on the
those?
20th. I'll be in Chile on the 20th of
Okay.
December.
Well, I was actually more worried about the first, so the 6th
The
is, I was the one that started off
You
with
had
the
the
problem with
started, and
6th.
then you were
That
okay with
went
the
away.
6th, so we were all going back to the 6th.
And then did we have, was the 13th, if we needed it, was the 13th an option?
I am back for my nephew's wedding. Yes, I can do that.
I believe it was an option.
It's already on my calendar, actually. But we're doing the 6th, are we?
The
So I'll
6th.
move the 13th to the 6th.
Which date did you have, Pete?
The 13th, I already
You
have.
already had, I
Yeah,
think that
and
was
then we-
before,
And then you just.
I
sent the email out and
reversed
changed it to
myself
the
on not
6th.
being able to do the 6th, and then we went back to the 6th.
Okay.
Oh, so the 13th is technically not,
We could do a meeting on the 13th.
okay.
I have it, yeah, I have that as a question, okay. We could do it on the 13th, that works for me if we need to do that. So if it came down to it, without knowing what's coming in on before Thanksgiving, it's
No,
hard to
I know, it's difficult. It's just, my hope is that, we can, in our push to get people to apply, to really give the full picture. All right, applications due the 23rd, announcements made December 15th or January 1st, or whatever is realistic. Again, to just eyes wide open.
Right. Well, as a practical matter, whether it's the 15th or the 20th or the 27th of December, it won't matter. Because the committees won't form until after New Year's anyway. Whatever those dates are, nothing's going to happen before January.
Okay, so would it be realistic to maybe January 15th?
I wouldn't make it January 15th, I'd make it early January. If we were to go out past the holidays to announce, I would make it early January. I wouldn't wait till mid-January. I would do
Okay,
early.
so,
That way they have the month of January to organize.
okay, so what would be good?
We're meeting the 10th and the 24th in January.
The 10th?
10th. I mean, we
Yeah.
start pushing this out. This is
I know,
crazy.
this is just cuckoo,
Yeah.
but I see, that December is,
So here's what I'm trying to play out here is, so we will have 2 meetings in December, and right now, for planning purposes, I'm assuming that whoever the candidates are that are appropriate for us to look at, we will be able to look at them, and if necessary, look at a few of them closely over the course of our 2 meetings in December, which says we will know what we want. As it stands right now, we'll know what we want, who we think it should be after the meeting on the 20th, as it stands right now.
I would think so.
That would then necessitate, if we follow what we're talking about, some sort of a coordination meeting with the school committee and the moderator, where or at least a sharing of information to where here's the people we're planning to appoint. Everybody gets to see that, ruminate over that,
right,
and then probably have a third meeting that is either going to turn out to be the appointment meeting if nothing that anybody else is doing affects your thinking, or a third meeting to make modifications if something does affect your thinking. That, for us right now, would be the 10th of January. And I would guess, at that point, we might still, if we've changed anything, we'd let the school committee and the moderator know. It's kind of like, so if you keep passing the information around, is anybody still changing position? If nobody's changing position, then it's just a matter of appointing them. And what I'm trying to play out is when that coordination occurs, because ideally I would say, well, the appointing date should be the 10th of January, at least for us. But that then says we've had coordination among the 3 appointing authorities before
and
that.
I think we can do that.
I think we can do
I
that.
don't think we should move beyond January
Okay.
10th. It's
Okay.
getting, if applications are due
When do you
November.
guys meet in January?
We'll set up, we'll set up another meeting, that it's not that difficult for us to do, because I think we want to make sure we line up what folks are doing. I think your dates are a little bit more, are harder than ours, so we can be flexible, and we really want to get a committee started. So if we can work with January 10th, we're making the announcement, that could be good.
And I guess I wouldn't rule out a workshop with the moderator of the school committee.
Yeah.
And the board of selectmen, that coordination thing I'm talking about, we could actually do that in real time. In early January.
Yes, exactly.
And that way, we don't have to kind of like play ping pong
Yeah.
with people's individual meeting dates. We could just plan a joint workshop.
Before or after, before the 10th?
Before.
I think it would be before the 10th, and then 10th would be the point.
Announcement.
Yeah, ideally, it'd be before the 10th.
Okay, I know I have CES January 5th, 6th, 7th, so that's that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then we have a meeting on the 10th.
I don't,
So it's either right after New Year's, like literally, but otherwise I know I'm gonna be gone out in Vegas.
That first week is going to be difficult, the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th.
so one option is we could have the workshop on January 10th. We could have you all come.
Or, if
We'll let you know
our
what we think.
applications are due on the, I just think it's just too far out. If our applications are due the 23rd, okay, we could, in theory, have our workshop during the first week of December. Could we not?
Absolutely.
Well, when are you going to decide when are you going to decide who you want to appoint?
That hasn't been determined. We'll make it work. We'll have a workshop, a school committee workshop, and an open meeting, because we're not appointing a subcommittee. And then, so we'll work with the deadlines we create.
But all I'm saying is the first week of December, so you have Thanksgiving.
Too soon, okay.
There's the week after Thanksgiving, which is the 28th of November to the 2nd of December, which we don't currently have a meeting planned for. Our first meeting is the 4th of December, which is the first full week of December. And I'm assuming that each
You're the
appointing
6th,
authority.
right?
The 6th, the 4th and the
Sixth.
Sunday.
I'm sorry, I don't have my glasses on. 6th. I'm assuming that each appointing authority will first want to discuss their applicants, whoever is appropriate for them to look at. Each appointing authority will want to do that on their own first. And so basically, what we just said was, and if it's all straightforward, then we're done on the 6th in our case. If it's not all straightforward, we want to bring anybody in for interviews.
20th,
That's
yep.
2 weeks later. That's how we got us out to the 20th. And we could go to the 13th to pull that in by a week. And then if we did that, we could have a workshop you're gone on the 20th, so that's not going to work. So I'm not, you're trying to jam a lot of stuff in
Yeah.
before the holidays.
I don't know. What do you guys think if we go much further out than January 10th?
Why
to
wouldn't you
now?
have the workshop early on as part of that, determine what you have for a pool of applicants, which ones you can clearly decide if to one or another, and which are in the mix, so it's all,
Do
I
that,
like-
but
I
then
like that
We can do
idea.
that, but then you don't have the coordination workshop at the end about finding out who's appointing who.
Or we could have both.
Well, yeah.
you
I
know,
mean,
the groups, if there's overlap, you can identify them right up front. Maybe there isn't.
It's not a matter of overlap, Mark. It's a matter of if Scott appoints a 65-year-old building expert as his 65-year-old, I would think that's going to affect the kind of people we might appoint as our 2 discretionary appointments. If we had somebody who's not, if we had somebody like the guy who was the head of, I think it was Right Field, who had been a principal in the schools, but then now he's in architecture. And we picked somebody like that, but he was an educator for 25 years before he got into school building construction. My guess is that could potentially influence how the school committee thinks about who they want to bring in on that. So that's the issue I have, is that there's no universal rule that says people can only have expertise in one of the preordained areas that the revised building committee bylaw specified.
I'm only so lucky to have that.
Yeah, no, you're right, yeah.
So,
Chris, you've been, I can't tell if you were Morse coding me or if you were. Talk to the hand.
Chris Potts, 7 Curve Street. So I think that what I'm sitting here and I'm listening to the debates on the date, and I know that you've seemed like you've all settled on that date before Thanksgiving. But it seems to me to be the most efficient is to actually use your existing Board of Selectmen dates as potential points that you could be touching base. So November 15th, if you had an application deadline for November 15th, say at noon, and you put it on the agenda 2 days before, you could use the meeting of November 15th to actually do an initial touch base. Where are we in this process? How many applications did we get? Did we get the bylaw approval? Use the 15th as the deadline. You would save a lot of time trying to figure out all these other meetings, and at least you're using one existing meeting that you have on the calendar as a discussion point. I feel like you're trying to pull these dates out of the air, and you're losing a lot of time in the process why not work with the date you already have?
Short answer was because the date we should work with is after the AG's deadline date of November 16th.
But the date that you already chose for the existing deadline is before the approval anyway.
It's in October.
Well, now, but it's only a day after. It won't really matter. At that point in time, you'll know, if you set a deadline for November 15th, at that point in time, you're gonna have a pretty good sense of where you are. It's only a day before their deadline. I just feel like, I also worry about what else is going on here at Town Hall in January with budgets and everything else, and Christine being overwhelmed and everybody else being overwhelmed.
We're not overwhelmed. We'll be up to full staffing in November. We are not overwhelmed. Overwhelmed. No.
I just feel like that it's being extended out unnecessarily. I think you can, if you worked with your existing Board of Selectmen meeting in November, you'd be able to pick up a little bit of time. That's just my 2 cents.
Unless the AG doesn't give us a decision until the 16th, and if it goes against the bylaw, then it all gets blown.
But you're not actually going to be making appointments that
Just
night.
making the cutoff
Yeah.
application.
So, I mean, people
just
can.
cutting off the application
People can
night.
send them in now.
Right.
Yeah. But this whole discussion started with, you're asking for a deadline, right? Like, so we need to put a line in the
So we
sand.
can clearly
Right.
communicate.
Right, exactly.
Right.
With the picture of.
Right.
And technically, it's only really, when you think about it, it's really 7 positions, not 12.
Correct.
Because you're going to have your automatic committees that are going to be putting forth their people. So
Right.
it's 7
Right.
positions.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like I said, I wasn't gonna fall on my sword over the date. I only picked Thanksgiving because it was after the AG's deadline, and it was an easy date to remember. And then we settled on the 23rd, you suggested 15th. We could pick the 15th.
I mean,
I just don't want to change the date again.
I have
Right,
faith in
well,
Mark,
that's-
that
right,
Mark is
and-
giving us good data, that we're going to hear something in the next 7 to 10 days, right? Which is long before November 16th, right? Mark, do what?
I
Feel
don't,
good?
I would say that's a conservative approach. It may be sooner.
Right, so that's why if we
Sooner
were to
than next
stay.
week? Or,
She
What-
told
what's-
Mark
what's
that it's
conservative?
likely to be done this week. I thought that's what you
Right.
said.
So that's why I'm saying 7 to 10 days, and Mark's probably sitting like, he might have it in his email tomorrow, right? So if that's the case, if we're going to put the date out, we've put it way far out than really needs to be, but I understand the caution around it.
You can't pull it back, though, so
Right.
you can
Keep pushing it
always
out.
extend it further. But
That's very true.
I would just like to pick one date. So if your intel is solid, then I'm fine if we move it up to the 15th. I just want to pick a date.
What date do you like, Eileen?
Because I have a lot of confidence in Mark, I would say October 25th, and we're gonna know at that meeting, and if we have to let people know, you know what, we didn't get the news, then we didn't, but we've just saved a ton of time closing. If we had 82 applications we had to go through, that'd be one thing, but I sense that hopefully we'll get a
Well-
dozen and then to 2 dozen.
Yeah, I think we're gonna need beyond October 25th to get the applications that we need.
Okay.
So that's not, I think that's too early.
Yeah, and
I had
exactly.
suggested
I like
November
November
1.
1st, I'll go November
I like
1st.
November 1st.
All right.
I've expressed my opinion. I'm happy to, you know, I am
Everyone
happy,
wanted to
so
go
we'll
home.
say November
Sorry.
1st is the deadline. You have to have applications in by the end of the month.
Perfect.
And we'll see.
The day after Halloween, just in case that plays in anything.
Well, I
It's
will
all
be-
Saint,
just
that's all
being-
Saints Day,
just
right?
being
That's
fresh.
probably a good omen.
That is a good omen, I know. All right, November
We'll
1st.
find-
Tuesday, November 1st.
Tuesday,
Saints.
November 21st. Okay, first.
November 1st.
However, so then when are we announcing? Again,
When are we announcing what?
The appointments.
appointments. So original was November 23rd and January 10th. That's what we were getting at. So now if we're moving up the deadline November 1st for applications, when is it realistic? Could we realistically announce them before Thanksgiving?
So the short answer is, how many applications will you have on November 1st?
And we'll have a good handle on that on October 25th.
Because if we have enough on November 1st, then what you're saying, can we process them and make a decision before Thanksgiving? I think the answer is yes. If we don't have enough of the proper skill sets
Yes, I
by
agree.
November 1st, or if the AG has not announced the decision by November 1st, then I am not optimistic we're gonna I don't know how to answer your question, I guess is what I'm saying. Because I don't know how to set the I can't set the context with any degree of assurance at this point.
Do you extend your application deadline if you don't get enough? Why don't you build in a couple of weeks for extending the deadline and take that as your,
Well, that was kind
So-
of
That was November
part of
23rd.
my thinking, but
So I would say November 1 is the deadline for applications, and then we'll announce it by the 22nd. We'll give ourselves 3 weeks to process the applications, do the coordination that we need to do. We've got a meeting on the 15th. We can always schedule another meeting on the 8th or the 22nd.
and if we don't have the applications in, Pete, then what?
Well, if we don't get people applying, then we're going to have to rethink the whole process.
Okay.
Yeah, then we'll have really big problems.
pulling it back is your problem, pushing it out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think you started by saying, well, I'd like to pick a date that's not gonna change, and I was thinking the same thing, but
Yeah, I would
now it's
prefer
like, well,
not
we're
to.
picking a date that we're hoping we can meet, and, you have
And we're
to have
picking the date because of the AG, right? That's all around the AG.
Yes.
And that's.
Yeah, we were on one track when we thought we were gonna get an answer from the AG back in early October that we haven't gotten, so that's,
Well, we figured here in August, and August got pushed to October.
right.
And,
And you wouldn't think there would have been a second extension if there wasn't some serious concern, but perhaps there wasn't. And they just had a workload issue, I don't
They
know.
could have taken 90 days. They took only 45.
But why did they need it?
Because they're overworked, because
So maybe it's
with
just a
with COVID
workload.
and all, there was a huge
Okay,
demand upon them this year with
Okay.
various municipalities.
okay. Deadline for the application at this point is the 1st of November. And Pete, you said the 22nd of November, like 2 days before Thanksgiving?
You're gonna meet 2 days before Thanksgiving?
no.
I'm not even in town.
Yeah, okay.
No, we're not gonna meet.
Should we just do the first week of December then,
Yeah.
to be realistic? And not
It works for me.
Yeah, the December 6th meeting?
So, yeah,
December 6th? There we go.
And that's,
To announce the appointees, correct?
well, so then you have to back up to that coordination meeting. When's that gonna happen?
Middle.
And we will have that be,
Well, we have
we
a
don't
November
have to
15th
decide that now. If we know we're working with November 1st
Okay.
and December 6th, we can figure out offline
Okay.
some dates.
And I think the one thing that's important about November 1st is we push it out any longer. It's almost like we kid about like people wait till the last minute. Like
I
pushing it
agree.
out's not really
Yeah.
going to gain us too much more. That
No, but we'll make an extra effort,
Yep,
really,
yep.
to get it out there.
absolutely, it's a solid, pretty much a solid month ahead. So, okay,
Hallelujah.
We done?
all right,
I think we're set.
all right.
Any other comments from the gallery, from Medfield TV?
He's like, dude, you guys are beating this.
We got-
more of these copies.
Yeah.
All right.
Medfield TV, come prepared.
I have places to go and people
We
to
have
see.
3 large coffee mugs ready for a Board of Selectmen meeting. I love that. That's it. Yeah. The BOS meetings are definitely 2-mug coffee meetings. All right.
We are that entertaining, people.
I think that does it for tonight. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Hope everyone has a good night. Sure.
Thank you.
Yep.